I'm Michelle Crummell, and in this video we are going to look at how to typeset brackets, tables, and arrays using LaTeX. I'm working in TexMaker, but you can work in any text editor that you like, or you can work online in Overleaf, and there are links in the description below to register for an Overleaf account if you want to just work in your web browser. So we have lots of different type of bracketing symbols when we use math notation, but probably the most popular would be parentheses, square brackets, and curly brackets. So let's start there. If you have a short object, then you don't need to do anything special for parentheses. Let's say, for example, the distributive property states that A times, and notice I did use a dollar symbol to enter math mode, A times B plus C equals A times B plus A times C for all A, B, C. I can get fancy here with my notation if I want. I can use the element symbol or the \n. And then if I want to say the set of real numbers, then there's a special way to type that symbol as well, \mathbb, curly brackets, and then for the set of all real numbers, I need a capital R. Now, I think I'm going to have to load a special package to make this work. Let's see if I get a compiling error. I do. Okay, so let's come back up here in my preamble. Everything before begin document is called the preamble. And I'm going to use a package. Let's see, AMS fonts, AMS sim, AMS math. I always load those three packages right off the bat. So to be honest with you, I don't even remember which one of the three I need. It's only one of those three that I need to make this mathbb command work. I'm just so in the habit of using all three packages all the time, so I don't remember which one does what. Okay, but that worked, and we can see the result here. The distributive property states, and so here we have this in math mode, A times B plus C. The parentheses look good. They are sized appropriately for what's inside. Equals AB plus AC for all A, B, and C in the set of real numbers. Now, square brackets work in a similar way. You can just type them using your keyboard. So let's use a line break here. There's a couple ways to do a line break. I like to do the double backslash and then insert a little bit of extra space. There are lots of other ways to get spacing between your lines, things that you can do in your preambles so that you don't have to do this every single time. You can change the line spacing throughout your whole document, but that's a little more complicated, and we're trying to keep things really simple for right now. So I'm just going to do that. And next we'll say the equivalence class of A, I'm putting A in math mode, is, and then we'll use square brackets around the A there, and I will typeset that. So I'm just using F1 on my keyboard because that's a keyboard shortcut for TexMaker to compile. Otherwise, I could also come up here and click this arrow. Okay, so the equivalence class of A is A, and you can see the square brackets appear as expected. A is just a normal sized element, so the brackets don't need to be larger, smaller, they're sized appropriately. Okay, this does look a little weird though because the first sentence is indented and the second one is not. This double backslash creates a soft return. It doesn't start a new paragraph, and so this sentence that I have here is not considered a new paragraph and it is not indented. I'm not in the habit of worrying about that because I almost always turn off indenting in my documents. So I'm going to come back up into the preamble. It's the area before begin document. I'm going to type /par indent. This is going to change the rules for paragraph indenting. And I'm going to say 0px. So indent my paragraphs by 0 pixels. In other words, don't indent my paragraphs. And then I'll recompile. And you can see that none of my lines are indented. That's just my preference, the way that I like to work. You certainly don't have to do that. Now let's take a look at curly brackets. So parentheses, easy, you just type them on your keyboard. Square brackets, easy, just type them on your keyboard. Curly brackets, not quite so easy. We'll say the set A is defined to be, And then we'll just call A the set of the numbers 1, 2, 3. So curly bracket, 1, 2, 3, curly bracket, close math mode, and then compile. What did I do wrong here? Forgot my square bracket in front. Let's try that again. Okay. Now I didn't get the result I expected because I typed curly brackets around this set, but the curly brackets didn't show up on my PDF. And that's because the curly bracket is a symbol that is reserved for part of the coding in LaTeX. That is a special symbol that tells the compiler something. And so you can't just type a curly bracket and get it to show up. You have to do something different. If you want the curly bracket to show up, you type a backslash in front of it. And that's true for this opening curly bracket and also the closing curly bracket. You put a backslash in front of it, and now when we compile, the symbols will show in the PDF. So the compiler knows that this is not the coding curly bracket is actually one that needs to be displayed. Now another symbol that is reserved for special syntax in LaTeX is the dollar symbol, and we've seen that many times so far. The dollar sign is used to indicate that we're starting math mode, but sometimes you might want to display a dollar sign, right? If we're talking about money. So for example, the movie ticket costs $11.50. Okay, so right away I know that I have a problem here because this has turned green. This has turned green. So the compiler thinks that I've opened math mode and I have not closed math mode. Well, I can close it here, and that's a little better. We're back to normal down here. But now clearly the dollar sign, this dollar sign is not going to be displayed because this is just telling me that I'm in math mode. So let's compile that, and I don't see the dollar sign. So if you want to see a dollar sign, well, first of all, if we type an extra one inside math mode, we're going to have issues. That confuses the compiler. So if you want to display the dollar sign, you just type a backslash in front of it. Same with the curly bracket. And now when we compile, it knows, oh, this dollar sign is meant to be displayed. And so it will print it on our PDF. And we've got $11.50. Now sometimes you want to put brackets, whether they're parentheses or square brackets or curly brackets, or absolute value symbols or some other symbols, greatest integer symbols, that type of thing. Sometimes you want to put those around notation that is much bigger, taller. So let me show you what I mean by that. And here I'm just going to do a hard return here. And let's type this fraction. I'm going to do double dollar signs to give me displayed math mode. So it's going to put this math on its own line, centered on the page, and I'm going to type a fraction. So my fraction is going to be 1 over x squared minus 1. Here's my fraction, 1 over x squared minus 1. Let's say I want to put parentheses around that. I don't know why, maybe there's a 2 in front of it. Yeah, let's do that. Okay. That looks pretty bad. The parentheses are not tall enough. They're not surrounding the information inside of the parentheses. Now, if I wasn't in displayed math mode, it would be a little better. So instead of double dollar signs, let me go back to single dollar signs and show you. It's a little bit better. It's still not perfect. The parentheses still don't seem to be tall enough to cover what's inside of them. So it's not just because I'm in displayed math mode that that's an issue, but it's more pronounced when you're in displayed math mode. How can we fix that? Well, we can make the parentheses automatically change in size to fit whatever's inside of them by typing, go to your parentheses where they start. So your left parenthesis, I think is the singular of parentheses. Go to your left parenthesis and type backslash left in front of it. And then go to the right parenthesis and type backslash right in front of that one. And now let's compile that. And you can see that they've automatically expanded to an appropriate size. That looks much better. So this works with lots of different bracketing symbols. I'm just going to copy this a couple of times, and we're going to change the parentheses to square brackets. Square bracket, and curly bracket. Now remember, to get the curly bracket to show up, you have to put a backslash in front of it. And compile, and there we go. So we've automatically expanded the size of our brackets in these 3 examples. If you're working with vectors, you might even want an angular bracket. So let me delete, I'm just going to space this out a bit. If we want parentheses, we would type parentheses like this. So let's go back to parentheses. Okay, that's normal parentheses. But if you want an angular bracket, instead of parentheses, you're going to type backslash L angle. So left angle. And then over here, instead of parentheses, you're going to type /R angle. /R angle for right angle. And then when we compile that, you get your angular brackets. You might also need to do this for an absolute value expression. So instead of this left angular bracket, we can just use on the keyboard, type the, I think it's called a pipe, but it's right above the return key or the enter key to get your absolute value symbol to expand. So \left, \right is going to expand the size of those brackets. Now, there might be a case where you just need a bracket to show up on one side, not the other. An example of this could be in calculus. If we have something like dy dx at x = 1, we could use a notation. So let me start with a fraction for the dy dx. So \frac dy dx. And now I want dy dx at x = 1, or when x = 1. So normally the way we write that is we would do a vertical bar and then a subscript. So here's a subscript of x = 1. Now if I just type x = 1, only the x is going to be in the subscript. So I need to put curly brackets around my x = 1 if I want that all in the subscript. Let's see how that looks. So I'm almost there, but that vertical bar, that pipe symbol, it's not tall enough. I want it to expand. So let's try that trick where we type a \left or a \right in front of it. Let's do /right to get it to be larger. Now, when I try and compile this, I'm going to get an error because when you use a /right command, you have to have a matching /left and vice versa. So when you do /left, you need a /right. But I don't want a symbol to show up on the left. We can get around that though. I'm going to go ahead and type the /left. And then in order to tell it to not display a symbol, I'm just going to use a period. Just type a period on your keyboard and it won't display that. So now the notation looks proper. So hopefully that covers all of the types of bracketing symbols that you need, and you can certainly have brackets around something that's inside of something else. So you could have multiple pairs of brackets all in sort of one expression. For example, let's kind of build off of, well, let's do a fraction. We'll do a complex fraction. So fraction, we'll do 1/1 plus x to start with. And let's say we want to put parentheses around that. So we'll do /left and then the left parenthesis, /right and the right parenthesis. We'll compile that. So that looks good. And I'm going to put a 1 plus in front of this. Okay, so there we are now. Now I want to make this all the denominator of another fraction. So it'll be 1 over 1 plus 1 over 1 plus x. Okay, so this whole thing that I've typed right here, I want to be in the denominator of a fraction. So I'm going to put curly brackets around it. That's the curly brackets for my denominator. In front of that, I'll do another pair of curly brackets for the numerator, and the numerator is just going to be 1. And in front of that, I need my fraction command. Let's compile that. So there we go. And notice that the parentheses are adjusting in size to fit like the container, what's inside. Now let's say I want to put big parentheses around all of that. So in front, I'll do a slash left. Oh, I'm in the wrong place, sorry. Go to the very front. There we are. Slash left, parentheses, and then go to the very end here, slash right, parentheses, compile. Now you can see those parentheses are really big. So they are automatically going to adjust to the content inside of the parentheses. Okay, let's move on and talk about tables. I'll just give myself some space here. And we will look at tables. We'll start with a very simple table and then we'll add some more components to it. So first of all, to start my table, it's backslash begin, curly brackets, tabular. Actually, I'm gonna, hit enter and let it kind of finish that out for me. So with a begin tabular, you'll have an end tabular. And notice that we have an extra pair of curly brackets after begin tabular. So here you have to establish like how many columns you want in your table. Let's say we're going to make a table with x values of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we need 6 columns in our table. 6 columns in our table. I can type C, 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 C. I typed a C 6 times. Each one of those C's represents a column. So this is going to be a table with 6 columns. Now the reason I typed a C was not, C doesn't stand for column. C stands for centered, because the text or the whatever it is you're putting in the cell of your table, it can be center aligned, left aligned, or right aligned. So like normally I would say probably your mathematical tables, your values are going to be centered in the table cell. So I normally use C's. If I wanted items in my cells to be left aligned, I could use L's. L, 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 L. That would give me a table with 6 columns. If I wanted the content to be right aligned, I would use R's. You can also do any kind of combination like that. So you identify for each column if you want the content to be aligned left, center, or right. Let's go back to center aligned. And then we have to type some content for our table. So I'm going to type, this is what I want in my table, x, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is not going to work right now if I compile. Oh, it actually did give me something, but it's not a table. This is just one, this is all in one column right now, all in one column. The way that you separate items into columns is with the ampersand. So now if I compile, X is in the first column, and then right now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is in the second column. So we want to go through here and put an ampersand in between like so. Okay, now we have a table with 6 columns, which is what I wanted. I guess it would be easier to see. You just kind of have to trust me right now how many columns I have. It would be easier to see if we had, lines separating. So I should have done that. Let me go back and show you how to do that. If you want vertical lines, like in between your table columns, then you come back up here and you use that pipe symbol on your keyboard. It's above the return key or the enter key. And you put that in between each one of these like so. Let's recompile. And we get those vertical bars. So now I can see how many columns I had. So let me take out my ampersands. Let me go back to what it was. 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. And you can see that it was all smushed into one cell, which is not what we wanted. So you need to use the ampersands to separate the content into your different columns. Now, when you get to the end of your first row, you hit 2 backslashes to indicate that that is the end of the row. Okay, so here we are. Then you can do your next line. So the next line, let's say we want f of x and then whatever our f of x values are. We'll just do 10, 11, 12, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and we'll end that line. Okay, that's all right. Now the x and the f of x, they don't look like math. They're in text mode, they're not in math mode, so let's fix that. Put dollar symbols, dollar signs around the x and around the f of x. All right, that looks much better. Now we're missing the lines that separate our rows, right? So in order to get a horizontal line, we're going to type \h line. Now we'll compile that and it gives me a horizontal line. So I did that at the end of the first row, and I'm going to do that again at the end of the second row. Now I need to do that above my first row. Okay, and there is a basic table. Sometimes I like to, after the first column, put a double pipe here to separate the label x, f of x from the values in the table, like so. So we can do that. So that is a very basic table right there. Let me copy that. And let's say that instead of 10 for f of 1, we had a fraction here. So we'll do math mode /frac, and we'll just use the fraction 1/2. Oh, let's separate these tables a little better. So I'm going to insert some vertical space here, /v space. And then I can decide how much vertical space. I'm going to put 1 centimeter of space right there. Just separate those tables. And I'm going to turn off my page numbering as well. So I'm going to go all the way back up to the top, /page style, empty, compile, and that turned off my page numbers. Okay, so there are my tables. Let me scroll back down here. So I'm working with the copy of my first table right here. We changed f of 1 to equal 1/2. And you can see that the 1/2, because it is taller than these other values, is sort of touching the top and the bottom of the row border. We want to give this a little more space. And so let me show you how you can add a little more to this table. Instead of starting with begin tabular, we're actually going to start with /begin table. Now, if I hit enter, it's going to put my end table right here. I need the end table to go after the end tabular. It's like a sandwich, right? We've got begin table, begin tabular. And then at the end, we have end tabular, end table. Okay, so, I mean, that hasn't changed anything yet. Let me recompile. We're still in good shape. Actually, I lost my second table. I think that begin table requires a package. Hang on, let me do full page. I wasn't expecting that to have, oh, okay. Here's the second table up here. Yes. So this is the frustrating thing about working with tables. In a word processor, when you enter a table, you're very specific about where you want that table to appear. It's wherever you type it. Wherever you enter it, that's where it's going to be displayed, right, in a word processor. Not so here. Here, when you enter a table, the compiler is going to decide where it thinks that table will fit best on your page. So you can see what happened to us here. And the second table is the one that had the fraction 1/2 for f of 1. So that's this table at the top here. It got moved up to the top of the page. That's not where I want it. I want it down here at the bottom of the page. And normally you're particular about where you want your table to go. If you're creating a long paper, you might not matter so much whether it's, you know, on the page before or on the next page or at the top of the page or at the bottom of the page. Like, you might be fine with giving the compiler the flexibility to decide where it thinks the table will fit best. There is a way that you can tell it, no, I want it to appear right here in the code where I've entered it. And all we need to do for that is square brackets and a capital H. So let me recompile. And I think I need the float package for this. Let me go back up to the top. / use package float. Yes, I did. We'll talk about packages more in another tutorial, but for certain commands in LaTeX, you need to load a package before that command is going to work. So in order to use this right here, we need to load the float package. All right, so now we're good to go. Let me make this larger again. There's our second table. And we were talking about the spacing issue. Like, I want to add more space in there. So in between begin table and begin tabular, I'm going to type \def. That's going to define something new. And then \array stretch. And then in curly brackets, you're going to type a number. And the number that you type is going to determine how much extra spacing you have. I usually go with 1.2. So let's compile that and see how that looks. So just added a little bit of space, right? You can make that bigger. Like sometimes I'll go up to 1.8. Let's just go with 2 and see what happens. Okay, so if you go with 2, then you get, that's too much space. Like now it's starting to look a little bit weird. Maybe we'll split the difference. We'll go like 1.5. All right, that looks pretty good. It's not perfect, like there's more space at the top than the bottom, so you can play around with that if you don't like exactly how it looks. But that's an easy way to get some extra padding, if you will, in your table cells. The other thing we can do by starting our table with begin table, in addition to the begin tabular, is we can now add a caption to our table. And you can add the caption above your table, or you can add the caption below your table. Let's add it below. And so after the, in between the end tabular and the end table, I'm going to type /caption. And then you can enter your caption. So I don't know what we want to say. These values represent the function f of x. And we'll compile that. And yeah, that looks a little weird because, let me go back to full page. The caption looks like it's being centered, whereas the table is not being centered. So that is a bit strange. If I want my table centered, then again, in between begin table and define and begin tabular, I can do \centering. And that will center the table. I normally center my tables, so I wasn't expecting that issue. I'm not used to that popping up, especially when I'm captioning things. I like normally in my workflow, I center my tables. So I'm sure there is a way to get the caption to go to the left. You can force things to be flushed left if they're not automatically that way. But it's easy. It's an easy fix if you just want everything centered. And there we go. Now there are a lot of other things you can do to create more complex tables. I don't want to spend too much time, but there are some instances where you might want, what's it called? Where you have like something that spans over 2 table columns. I know there's a word for that. I can't think of it off the top of my head. But you can do something oh, merging cells, I think is what it's called in like in a spreadsheet program, where you can merge cells together. So you can do things like that as well with tables. You can also, sometimes you might want to have a sentence in a table cell. That sounds kind of weird, but I could think of an instance. Let's just do one real quick. I'm going to copy this table. So here's a copy of that table, which didn't fit on page 1, so it got pushed down to page 2. We'll make this a little bit bigger. And let's do something where we have just like 2 columns in our table. And I'm going to put text in here. So we might want it centered. We might want it flush left. We'll just see how it goes. I'm doing this off the top of my head. And I only have 2 columns, so it needs to look something more like this. Okay. And we're going to say at the top, f of x. And then in the second column at the top, we'll do f prime of x. And here we'll say x greater than 0. And here we'll say the function f of x is increasing. So let's see what that looks like. So this is a different kind of table. It just doesn't have just numeric values in it. It looks a little bit odd. Let's change the caption too, so this makes a little more sense. We'll say the relationship between f and f prime. Okay, and we could, if we want to this time, move the caption to the top. I noticed that that automatically numbered the tables. I didn't point that out either. It didn't happen with this table because with this really simple table, we just used begin tabular, end tabular. With these next 2 tables, we started with begin table before we did the begin tabular, and that gave us all of these extra options. And one of them is that it will number your tables as you go. So I didn't type table 1. That was this table right here. I did not type table 1 anywhere. It just knows that that is the first table in this begin table sequence. And then this next one, when I began a new table, now it knows, oh, that's table number 2. So it is numbering that for me, which is nice. Okay. What I wanted to show you, though, was how you can deal with long sentences in your table. So I'm going to copy this sentence a couple of times, which isn't very realistic, but let's just say like you had a lot of text to put in your table cell. Okay, then this happens. Let me make this, okay, this looks horrible, right? The table got cut off because the content inside of this one cell is so long, it doesn't fit. And so it ran off the page, which is definitely not good. We don't want that. So an option, if you're trying to type text, like long text in a table, instead of using a C here, and let's go ahead and change these to L's anyway, first, just to show you that when I do that, now in my table, this became left justified instead of centered. All of this became left justified. But what I can do with this instead, this second column, because I know that it has to accommodate such long text, is to put a P, and the P stands for paragraph. So it's indicating that we want this cell to contain a paragraph. And then in curly brackets, you indicate how wide you want that paragraph to be. So maybe we want it to be 2 centimeters. You can use inches. You can use other measurements that you want. Okay, so now at least it fits on the page. It still looks a little funky, right? But you can change this. We could even go with 2 inches, 3 inches. You can adjust it to fit your needs. And you can do that for each column. So if you have multiple columns with a lot of text in it, you can do that. All right, that's the basics of working with tables. There are a lot of other ways to customize tables. You can do shading, you can do all sorts of things, but this will get you through most of what you need to do with tables. We're going to wrap up this video today by talking about equation arrays. And so the easiest way I have found to create arrays is with the align command. Now there is also an equation array command, and by that I mean you can do \begin EQN. You can see right here, begin equation array. You can do it this way, and I used to do it this way, but now I have a different way that I prefer to do it. So I'm going to do let me first of all just say, put a little header here, arrays, and we're going to do \begin align. Now we have two options here. We've got a regular align, and then we have an align with an asterisk after it. Let's go with the regular one first, and then I'll explain what the asterisk does. Okay, so begin align, and we have to put some kind of content in here. So let's use this to solve an equation. 5x squared. Now notice when I started typing, this is in green, and green indicates that we're in math mode, but I didn't type a $sign. When you're inside of the align environment, you are automatically in math mode. So if I start typing text, now see the text is still green, that text is actually in math mode. Let me compile and show you, right? This looks really wonky. Everything in align is in math mode. So if you actually want text, you have to have some way to tell it, wait, I don't want this to be math mode. And you can do that with \text, and then just type your text. Let me change the text. Place your words here. Oops, curly bracket. Let's compile that. So now it knows that that's text. And we still have a spacing issue here. In math mode, this hasn't come up yet, but in math mode, the compiler ignores spaces. Like between the 5 and the X here, I can type as many spaces as I want. They're not going to appear on the document when I compile it. The 5 and the X squared are still right next to each other. So in math mode, spaces get ignored. And that's why this space is being ignored. So the P in this word is right next to the 2. If you need a space, there's a couple things we can do. In the text mode, we can just type a space, and that'll take care of that. So that worked. Or in math mode, if you need to force a space that will be displayed, you do \comma. So either one of those methods will work. Okay, but that's not actually what we're trying to do here. So let me take that out. 5x squared, we're going to solve an equation. 5x squared minus 9 equals x plus 3. So what I want to do next is subtract the x on both sides, subtract the 3 on both sides, and then write the result. Okay, so I need to end this line with a double \. And on the next line, type what I want next. 5x squared minus x minus 12. Oh, equals 0, right? Equals 0. Okay, so that's all right. Notice that I've got my equations on their own lines, and the equations are being numbered. So I didn't have to tell it, this is line number 1, this is line number 2. It's going to number them. And if I create another align, just duplicate this one, and compile it, it continues numbering from where it left off before, which is really nice in a math paper because your equations are all numbered, and then when you're talking about them in your paragraphs, you can refer to them by number. You can say, in equation 4, blah, blah, blah. So that is nice there. What I don't like about what I'm seeing, though, is that the equations are not aligned at the equal sign. It's much easier for the reader to follow the mathematics when you're solving an equation or simplifying things. You're going step by step. If you line up your equal signs, that's the proper way to do it. So in order to line up the equal signs, you just have to put an ampersand in front of them. Now, if you only do it on the one and not the other, It doesn't know what it's supposed to be lining up, so that's not going to work. It's going to be funky. But if you put the align in front of both equal signs, it knows to line up those equal signs. And this looks proper. This is what I wanted to see here. And we can, of course, add more lines than this. Just do double backslash and keep going. If you get to the point where there's nothing on the left side of the equal sign, that's okay too. We can just say ampersand equals, and it's going to start with an equal sign and line it up. So I don't know, we could do 12 plus x minus 5x squared, like so. And everything is lined up at the equal sign there. Now, if you don't want the line numbers to appear, not just appear, but if you don't want your lines numbered, that's when you would use the asterisk. If you do it in the begin, you have to also do it in the end. If they don't match, you'll get a compiling error. So this is going to turn off the equation numbering. So when I compile, the 3, 4, and the 5 have disappeared. And then if I copy this one again and compile, you'll see that it picks up where the first numbered one left off. So it's not that it's just hiding the line numbers, it's not even numbering them. So think about that carefully when you use it, which way you prefer to go. Okay, that does it for this tutorial. We looked at lots of ways to use brackets and to customize the height of the brackets. We looked at tables and we looked at arrays. In our next tutorial, we are going to be working with lists. Thanks for joining today. Hope to see you next time.